and at the same time, his drive, I mean, this is someone who can make stuff happen, you know what I'm saying? So I really appreciate that. So thank you for the very kind introduction. And I just want to say welcome, Palak. It's great to see you again. Thank you so much for taking the time out to connect. Ami, Navanita, Avantika, great to connect with you. Christina, I feel like I'm with close friends again, so it's just really, really wonderful. And I'll just start with this actually. In one of the greatest literatures within the Eastern Vedic canon, the it's called the Srimad Bhagavatam. It talks about the dynamic of the speaker and the listener, and that there's something very magical, I'd say almost mystical, that happens when you get two people, or let's say the audience and the speaker coming together, and both really want to grow and to learn and to develop. And when that happens, we see miracles. So I honestly want to say, or want to begin by saying thank you to all of you, because in every experience where I've come to connect with all of you, I've just found so many amazing things have come as a result. Now we have a lot to share, and I'm not going to do this on slides today. Okay, so we're going to have a very, very direct conversation. But I'm going to suggest, if you feel it will be useful, maybe grab a pen and paper. Okay, because there's a lot that we want to share with you, and I think you'll find this topic interesting. I mean, again, I really appreciate having an opportunity to discuss this, because what I'm about to discuss, what I'm going to discuss with you today, has been something that has really impacted my life in tremendous ways, in tremendous ways. And if we're able to grasp the significance of the topic that we're discussing, I can promise you, I repeat, I don't make this statement lightly, I can promise you it will make a big difference. We're going to do this in 3 parts. What I'm going to do is share with you something which is very, very simple, yet at the same time very sophisticated in its application. And I was thinking about how to frame this. And this is something that I've been researching and getting tremendous enthusiasm from. I was reading books on self-help, leadership, all of these different things since I was age 13, right? So I started at a very young age. And over the last few years, I was just reflecting and analyzing the quality of the things that I've read, but I wanted to analyze it in a very deep way. And I started to see that there are different types of self-help. Okay, now let me explain what I mean by that. Some self-help, they'll give you your 3 tips. Okay, so they'll talk at the level of principle, right? So, work hard, right? The work ethic can be a tip. And work hard, stay hungry, the idea of keep pushing, whatever it is. So some self-help literatures and research, they'll give insights at the level of a principle or a law, right? So like a universal idea that should be applied. That's one category of self-help. And there's some value in that. There's another category of self-help, which will give techniques, right? So the first category will give laws. You can call that the strategic level, right? Just based like a universal principle. The second category will give the tactical level, right? So, remember everyone's name in your company, okay? So don't forget people's names, right? Remember their birthdays, right? So it's like a hack. So it's a specific thing that you should do, which is meant to elicit a certain type of response. One of the things that really excited me as I've been exploring these Eastern literatures is that they give something which is even more powerful. And that is the connection between the principle and the detail. Okay. So a connection between the law, right? Some high level law or idea, and how that law or idea can be expressed on the ground in real time. And I've been working on one project, which, maybe we'll get into another time. And I was also trying to understand what's that point of translation, because I've seen this done badly. I've seen this done badly. So people may say that the manager should appreciate people. right? And then the manager says, yeah, we should appreciate people. So then what the manager does, he or she, they start thinking, you know, at the next team meeting, I'm going to call out the team member who did great work, right? Or when I'm on stage talking at the end of year function, I'm going to call out the team who did the best job. And he or she thinks that they're doing a fantastic job because, you know, I read in the book somewhere that you should appreciate people. I read it, and you know, it was in the book, which was a New York Times bestseller, so it must be correct. And I've seen this done, and it was a complete car crash. It was a complete failure. But the principle was correct. The principle of making people feel appreciated was absolutely correct. And the idea of you know, calling out the person's great work in the team meeting or on stage, it definitely has worked in many situations. So the principle is true. That detail has proven itself to be correct in many situations. What's missing? What's missing, ladies and gentlemen, is what we call translation. And the Vedas give this in abundance through various, let's say, pastimes or stories. They sometimes use the Sanskrit word lila, whereby you see the principle, but you also see how that principle should be expressed according to, and I'll give you the Sanskrit because it's very interesting. They call it Desha Kala Patra, right? So any law that you express, you're meant to express it according to time, place, circumstance, and person. Isn't that interesting, right? So for example, the principle—
Sorry, Ed, can you repeat that again? Because that was quite profound. Can that last bit, time, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, so time, place, circumstance, and person, right? Now, I'm gonna ask you to work with me on this, because I think you'll immediately see where I'm going with this. So I'm a manager. I read in the book that it's important for the leader to appreciate the team. So I've got the law, appreciation. Now, I've also read some article that you can appreciate your team members by calling out their great work in front of an audience. I read a few different things. Now, this law of our appreciation is there. I read all different things I could do. Why did I choose to appreciate the team in the way that I did? Right? Where does that come from, whether conscious or unconscious? When I decided I'm going to appreciate them by calling out their great work in the team meeting, there was a reason that I took that approach. Why did I take that approach out of many approaches I could take to demonstrate appreciation? Guesses? Any guesses? Dunya.
I would say because this is the closest connection to me and it's representing my inner needs.
Exactly, exactly. So one of the things, and this is also like a very ancient saying, everyone sees the world from their perspective, right? So I read the book, it said appreciation, and what I chose to do to express it was really my idea of appreciation, right? And what you often find is so many people, so many of us, it's so incredible. So many people in the world live like this, that whenever they hear something, the way that they express it is the way that works for them. Okay, and so Dunya, you're absolutely right. Now there's one problem with that, and I'm going to throw it back out to you. So I know the principle of appreciation. I've done it in the way that works for me. What's the potential problem?
Two different lenses.
Absolutely, absolutely, Ada. But Bilitis, what did you want to share? Because I saw your hand up as well.
Yes, simply to say, yes, it's your perception, and then you're missing maybe you have 50% of the vision, but what about the 50 other percent of the perception of others?
And that's the key point. So I'm appreciating them. So it's not the way that appreciation looks for me. It's all about the way that appreciation looks for them. You see? Because it's about them, right? I want them to feel appreciated. So the model that we're going to share, we're going to do this in 3 parts. it's an incredible model. It's very simple, very sophisticated, but the reason why I was so excited to share it with you, to be honest, is because it's universal. In the Vedic literature, especially in the Bhagavatam, there's a verse, and the verse explains that there are 10 topics in the Bhagavatam. I won't mention all of them, but one of the topics is called Sthanam. Sthanam means the structure of the universe. What we're going to be going through for the next 3 sessions are certain fundamental blueprints of reality. What I'm going to be sharing with you, when you deeply understand this, you'll start to be able to see the same model in many of the top models that you'll see in self-help, right? And if we have time, not in this session, but maybe in the last session or afterwards, I'll give you some examples of models which are secular models, which are built around the principles of this model that I'm going to share, because this model, being universal, has application across the board, okay? Has application across the board. Anyway, there's a lot to discuss with you. I'll give you an overview of the 3 stages. Then this week, we're going to focus on stage 1 of the model. So I'm going to give you the Sanskrit term first. This model is called Sambandha, Abhideya, and Prayojana. Okay, that's the Sanskrit, which is an ancient Indian language. But I'll give you the translation in terms of the model that we're going to use and how we're going to apply it. So it's direction, drive, and destination. Okay, so you can consider it the DNA of leadership. And one of the reasons why we call it the DNA is because it is a fundamental blueprint of reality. These 3 elements are elements of reality. This series of discussions we're going to have with you, they're not only useful for you in your leadership, they'll be useful for you in literally every area of life. I've been using this model since I kind of started to unpack it and come up with it. I've been using this model for years, and to be honest with you, it's just incredible. It allows me to immediately understand something very significant about any situation that I'm in. It allows me to very easily understand where the strengths are and where the gaps are in any endeavor. It allows me to get very clear ideas about what I can do practically to move forward. And it can help me to guarantee continuous outcomes and continuous results. Now, these are big claims. That's why I told you, pen and paper, okay? Let's get into it. Where there's so many things on my notes, and there's so much we could share. Let's begin here. So there's an ancient, and it's called the Itihasa. And I think you'll have heard about it in previous sessions, and maybe Simon Haas also touched upon this. There's a very well-known literature, one of the most well-known Vedic or Eastern literatures called the Mahabharata. And it's ultimately about 2 dynasties, the Kauravas and the Pandavas, 2 families, and they come into a conflict, etc. One of the main characters of the Mahabharata, his name is Yudhisthira, and Yudhisthira gives a formula for success. The formula that he gives is actually derived from the model that we're discussing: direction, drive, destination. He says, in order to be successful, you need to have, number 1, focus. Number 2, endeavor. And number 3, which is, so this is, and this is actually very interesting because it's now becoming more clear in self-help, but this is important also: good luck. Actually, there's always a luck factor that takes place. And often it's not talked about, but we'll come back to that maybe a bit later on. So focus, endeavor, and fortune. So sometimes it's called Daiva, which means good luck. Sometimes it may be considered supreme grace or mercy, however you term it, but it's a factor outside of us. But these 3 together make for tremendous outcomes and success, okay? So the fundamental of the program that we're talking about over the next 3 programs, this session is dedicated to direction, okay? which is Sambandha, and I'm going to expand on that. The next session we do will be looking at drive, which is the quality of our endeavor, the quality of our execution. And then the third stage, we'll be looking at destination, the outcome, and especially what we're meant to do with outcomes. Because this model has many different ways of being used. One of them, and we'll go into this in the third session, is that whenever you achieve something, okay, that achievement immediately becomes part of a new situation for you. For example, just to give a very simple example, you're trying to build your social media following. Okay, so you go through some activities, etc., etc. You go from 0 to let's say 10,000 people on your social media. The moment you hit 10,000, new possibilities become available. So now that destination, that outcome that you achieved of 10,000, now that goes into your starting point again, right? And because you've got 10,000 people on your social media, what are the new possibilities? Now we can start doing paid courses. Now we can start becoming, offering coaching, etc., etc., etc. So this model, these 3 stages are also cyclical: direction, drive, destination, and then the destination becomes part of your direction again. It becomes part of your starting point. Okay, let's move on. So in the Mahabharata, this formula comes from Yudhisthira, right? In order to be successful, and think about how powerful this is, you have to have focus, endeavor, and also good fortune. So today's session is all about this idea of focus. Okay, I want you to tune into what's happening in the modern world. And I'm going to be vulnerable. I want to share my own experience in this because I think it will help you a lot. I was recently speaking to a mutual friend of ours, actually Rikin and I, one of our friends, Anantacharya. We were in conversation, and he said something to me which was really interesting. He said to me, Ed, he said, I was having a conversation recently with someone, and he said, I started to understand more about your team model. Okay, because if you remember in a previous session, we talked about the team model. We said there's 4 types of personality. He said to me, we were talking about one of the personality types, the teacher. He said to me, I was speaking to someone recently, and they were talking about people who are teachers, right? So teachers are intellectuals, just for, to use a simple terminology. And what they were saying, oh, people like that, they just want to talk and they don't want to do anything practical. That's what he said to me, right? And I said to him, I said, the person who said that doesn't really understand. That's what I said to him. Right? I said to him, the person who said that doesn't really understand. I said, someone who's an intellectual, if they're good, and you have many people who are not good, but someone who's really good at that particular activity, I said, anyone who's good at that is like a good doctor. You may go to the doctor and the doctor's talking to you. And you say, well, the doctor, yeah, he talks or she talks, anyone can talk. But the doctor isn't actually talking. What is the doctor actually doing? The doctor is making a diagnosis. So they're asking you specific questions, but why are they asking the questions? They're using the questions in order to understand the reality. By understanding the reality about your health, they're able, through their vast store of learning, to start to analyze and say, oh, I understand. From everything you've told me, I can understand that you have this illness, and I can understand that if you take this particular medication for this particular period of time, you're going to regain your health again. So superficially, yes, they're talking, but accurately, if you go deeper, they're doing analysis. They're doing a careful analysis of the situation to really understand what's going on. Now, why am I talking about this? This first talk, when we talk about direction, there's many meanings to this. When we talk about direction, we're talking about where we place our focus, right? So we said this point from Mahabharata: focus, endeavor, and good fortune. Most people in life are wasting their potential. It's a very hard thing to say, but I mean it. I really mean it. Many people in life are wasting their potential because they haven't done this work in this area. Okay. I was speaking to a group. This was a few years ago, before the pandemic. And I told them to do an activity. I'm going to ask you to do this, right? I told them to visualize a heat map. Are you familiar with this idea of a heat map? Yep. A heat map is actually, I'll just bring a heat map onto the screen for you. I'm going to just draw this on, or get this on the screen, and I'm going to just show this to you because I want you to see this, and I think it'll be very important when you see this to understand what I'm trying to get at visually in this sense. So let's just get one particular image. So let's just put this in. Give me 1 second. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. I'm just going to check if I can do so. Okay, good. I can share my screen. That's good. So I'm going to bring up a heat map, and then I'm just going to show this image to you. Let's just do this beforehand. All right, I want to give an image of the heat map. All right, so let me know when you can see this particular image. Can you see it? Yeah, okay, perfect. So the idea of the heat map is very simple. You have some areas which are cold, some areas which are warm, okay? So for example, here, you see this heat map? Then you have in the bottom left, you've got some red, which means it's hot, okay? But the rest of it's blue. If I go back here, you have many areas which are red, okay? The majority of people in life are like this heat map that you can see right now. And it's a big, huge problem. And it's an even bigger problem because it's a hidden issue. What happens in the life of many people, what happens in the life of most people, is that they have decision fatigue. They have choice fatigue. They have information overload. Just like the heat map, there's so many different red areas. So the idea is, well, where do I give attention? Where do I give focus? If an individual is able to give proper time and energy in this idea of direction, this first stage, which also means strategy, if we're able to give proper time and attention in this area, you immediately change your chances of success. I mean, and not only change your chances, you literally amplify your chances of success, and you immediately minimize your chances of failure. It's that significant, right? There's a lot of research to back this up. How many of you have heard of the 80-20 rule? Okay, interesting. I'm going to ask one of you, just tell me, what is that rule, please? The 80-20 rule, what does it mean?
80% planning and preparation and 20% doing.
Okay, 80% planning and preparation, 20% doing. Absolutely, that's a very important point, Aidan. We're going to come back to that. Anything else? Yes.
Are you talking about Pareto's law?
Pareto's principle, which says that 80% of the problems are caused by only 20% of the causes.
Okay, definitely. Anything else? Someone else?
And yeah, so 80% of success comes from 20% of your activities. Or
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. Now let's just pause for a moment and think about the significance of that. And I'm going to get you to do an exercise on this today as well. What happens in many people's lives, what happens in many of our lives, is that because we don't do that stepping back, we're not seeing what we're not looking at, and I call this the effort to output ratio, right? We lose track of it. We lose track of it in many different domains of life, and therefore, and I've spoken to many people over the years, and the number one thing they say to me, Ed, I'm working so hard, and nothing seems to be happening. And then I started to understand this model, and I saw that's why. It's not the effort alone, although we'll come to that in the next session, okay? Because we talked about 3 stages, but it's where you play. Where you play in life makes the huge difference. There were so many examples, and I live and breathe this stuff, I'll be honest with you. I was speaking to managers about this for years, and it was just so incredibly interesting. 1 or 2 examples. How many of you, and I'm sure many of you will put your hands up because we're in the same space. How many of you remember those big, chunky Polaroid cameras, the ones which had the instant picture? Do you remember that? Any of you that old? Yes, okay, we remember that, right? Now, it was interesting. That camera was created by the Kodak company. And interestingly enough, Kodak were also the first organization in their field to invent the digital camera. Right? Where are they now? Huh? They were completely wiped out. Why? Because big organization, capital, resources, people, networks, reputation, brand, all of these things. But the focus was wrong. They didn't keep an understanding of the field of activity. So this first stage, direction, it can mean strategy, it can mean focus, it means understanding my actual reality, the reality of my situation. Whether the situation is the reality of my relationship. Situation could be the reality of my business. It could be the reality of the opposition and what they're, the opposition businesses, right? The other companies in my field and what they are able to do. The first mistake we make in life is to come out of touch with reality. The moment an individual is out of touch with reality, they've immediately minimized their chances of success. Ricken and I were speaking a while ago, and this is just to show you how applicable this is. We were speaking about a friend. It was actually someone that Ricken knew. And the person was in a relationship and they were acting in the wrong way. And I remember something Ricken said to me on the phone, which I thought was so insightful. He said, this person doesn't understand how to relate properly to this other person, right? And that's the first issue. It wasn't that they're not putting effort into the relationship, but it's not a question of just effort. You have to put the effort in the right direction. It's the right effort. So Kodak, they had this invention, digital camera, first of its kind. They didn't know what to do with it. Very soon, they were completely taken out by other companies in the field who then developed the same technology and saw its potential and focused in that direction. Example 1. Example 2, I remember years ago, I was in central London. There was a lineup of traffic. What was the traffic? Anyone been to the UK and seen the famous black cabs? You know the black cabs, right? Okay. All of them were lined up. Why were they lined up? They were protesting. What were they protesting against? One company, 4-letter name, which had disrupted their industry. Any guesses? 4-letter name of a company, exactly, Uber, right? So these black cabs going about doing their thing day in, day out, weren't aware of the situation, weren't conscious of the situation, the field that they are operating in, completely coming in disrupted by an organization that just took them out, literally overnight. Right? Many examples. Anyone old enough to remember Blockbuster Video? Or is it just me? Okay, right, exactly. This is how it is, people. Okay, so Blockbuster Video, completely taken out. You know what happened with Blockbuster Video? Netflix came to them. Netflix came to them, came to the company and said, we've created an online platform for streaming. Do you want to buy us out? Blockbuster Video did not know what to do with the opportunity. Soon after, they're taken away. Now, we want to make it even more personal. I saw in my own life something that was completely transformative. I mean, to this day, I'm still drawing upon the benefits of the lessons to this day. It's like when you throw something into the pond and you just see the ripples, it just keeps going out more and more. At a certain point, when I started to understand more about everyone's unique characteristics and gifts, I started to realize, how can I really utilize my gifts and potential in such a way that will make the greatest difference? So I mean, and I know many of them to this day, many of the people who I was around for the last 20 years or so, very strong in execution. You give them something, they can organize, get it done very, very strongly, right? And I was trying to do that in many cases, and there was some success in that area. But I saw that for the effort that I was putting in, compared to the effort that my peers were putting in the same act of execution, I saw that their effort was taking their execution further along. So it was the same task, execution, but it took more work for me to execute than for them. And I started to think, hold on, what is going on here? I'm working my socks off, okay? How come the same outcomes don't come? And then to this point of this session today, I started to read these ancient Vedic literatures with a new lens, seeing the situation from a new angle. And what kept literally shouting out from the pages was, what you need to do is focus in a different direction, right? And the idea, the principle's very, very strong, very simple, very clear, very robust. The message I kept getting is, focus on your strengths, where you can add value, where you can make a real difference. And then I started to look, so I stepped back and I thought to myself, where am I strong? And I realized, no, it's not in the execution, although, you know, everyone has to do something, you know, in life just to get things done for themselves personally. Well, I saw where we could really deliver maximum value was in strategic thinking, ideation, knowledge, and innovation. So I literally started to refocus, right? And in the team model, my personality style is the teacher, right? So in that model, which is derived from Eastern texts, the teachers are the intellectuals in society. They're the guides in society. You know, someone told me once, I had my, it's a little more of a subtle science, but some of you may be into it, some of you may not be. But once I had my palm read, and the person, he pointed to something in my palm. I'm not sure if you can see, but I've got this little spot on that finger. And he said to me, he said, that spot on your finger, he said, what that means is you have a guiding potency. You have the ability to really have a deep understanding of what's going on, and you can guide people as to where to put their focus, their resources, in order to deliver maximum impact and maximum outcomes, right? And when I understood this, I understood that for the majority of us, we don't play in the right area. Our focus isn't where it could be. And therefore, we don't achieve the outcomes in life that we can, even if we're working hard, right? Although there's a science to working hard, which we'll come to later on, okay? And then I started to see that this applied across the board, right? I was telling some friends of mine that in certain circles that I move in, I was saying that I've seen so many people I know who are married and who struggle in their marriage. And I made a conservative estimate. I said to them, I think we could reduce the proportion of bad marriages by over 50% overnight. It's a big claim, isn't it, right? Right? Divorces are on the rise, and that's not even considering the number of people who are staying together and absolutely hate each other, right? Some people are like that. They're in that space. Okay, for the kids, we're going to make it work. One friend of mine, he went to a birthday party of a mutual friend, and he told me the guys were just together in the room. and this person was celebrating, I'm not sure if it was their 43rd, 45th birthday, whatever it is. And the person told his friend, he said, my wife and I, we can hardly get along, but we're just staying together for the sake of the kids. That's what he actually told them. And this mutual friend, well, it was a mutual friend who said that. And then the friend who was there told me that's what he said. And I thought, that's increasingly the case at this time in the world situation. And I thought, okay, how can we make that claim that we could knock out the number of bad marriages by over 50% overnight? And it all comes back to the same principle. This idea, and the Sanskrit term, as we said before, is sambandha. Because sambandha means that you're deeply in touch with the reality of the situation. Because every single decision an individual makes is potent to the degree that they face the realities, right? And we know this intuitively. How many of you have seen your friend being in a situation, let's say being in a relationship, and you know, they show you the person they're in a relationship with, and you know from day one, this is never gonna work. Has anyone ever seen that, or is it just my friends? Yeah, interesting, exactly. But because you're looking at it objectively, right? And this is the first principle of success in life, the ability to come in deep touch with the reality, the sambandha. What's the truth of this situation? And if I am able to accept and understand the reality, then I can make powerful decisions which are going to move me forward. As long as I'm in denial, in the Vedas, they call this avidya. As long as I choose to be in ignorance, as long as I don't really accept the truth of something, I'm always going to be wasting my time, wasting my energy, and doing the wrong thing. So, going back to this example, the 80-20 rule, just think about this for a company. How many businesses and organizations are present right now? And the staff are working their socks off. And to this 80-20 rule, they're putting so much energy into areas of the business which are not getting them much return. Just think about what that means. Think about the cost to them in terms of time. We've all, to be honest, as a global society, we've gone through almost like a world trauma. The pandemic for many people was like a global trauma, where people were forced to completely rethink how they do things, you know, how they look after their children, how they educate their children, how they look after their own health, their considerations around the health of their family members, whether they're still going to have a job. In the UK, the government launched a furlough scheme. And the idea was that the government would provide some of the salary in order to incentivize managers from not making their staff redundant, right? Because you have a restaurant and now your country's in lockdown. There's no one coming to your restaurant. There's no money coming in. How long can you pay those people when you have no business coming in to make the profits to pay them, right? So the first key in life is to really come in deep touch with reality. And the reason why I said this is leadership DNA, and the reason why we said these are fundamental principles of reality, they're like the blueprints of reality, is because when you think about this principle of understanding the reality, it is exactly the principle behind one of the most famous and well-used frameworks in business, okay? There's a framework in business, 4 letters. I'm going to give you the first 2 letters. You're going to complete the abbreviation. SW. What comes next? Exactly. SWOT, right? What is a SWOT analysis? And all of these frameworks which aim at that purpose, they're all different ways of doing the same thing that we're talking about today. Understanding the reality of my situation. And by proper understanding of the reality, that then leads to a proper focus, right? I had a situation where at one point in my life, I was dealing with a certain group of people. and we were working very hard. And I'm being very, very honest. And my understanding was that it's one for all and all for one. Okay. And it's one reason, to be honest, why I like Rikin so much, because he's the kind of person, it's a two-way equation. It's reciprocal, right? So we'll go out of our way for each other, and that makes the relationship sustainable. But at one point in my life, I was dealing with a group of people, and I did not understand the reality of the people I was dealing with. I'm being very honest. I thought it's all for one, one for all. Okay, so I thought I'm pulling effort in. We're all working together. We're all in this together. We're all gonna help each other out, etc. And then an incident happened. I'd seen small signs in the, at certain points, but I ignored them. I didn't accept the reality. Okay, and then an incident happened where I was leading a certain initiative. The initiative was basically like, let's say, a sabotage. And then the group who I thought, yes, we're all in this together, there was no reciprocation. Radio silence, nothing. I was like, hold on. I thought it's all for one and one for all. And then I realized at that point, hold on, we've been giving a lot, and these people have been taking a lot. And it was, and even in situations where they could reciprocate, there was absolutely no interest in reciprocating, or they were giving as little as possible. And then what that really showed me, what life showed me, is like, it just really told me, pay attention here. Just notice how much you're giving and how much reciprocation is coming in that sense. And it was painful in one level, I'll be honest with you. But at the same time, it was a tremendous learning. I can't even describe it to you. It was one of the greatest lessons of my entire life. And I'm still drawing upon the benefit today, because it really brought out this point. Choose where you invest your time, your energy, your ability, right? That's what it really, really taught me, because it's not, there are many people who are working hard, but they're working, or they're giving their efforts in the wrong area. You see? So I shared this Facebook, it was an Instagram post recently, and it was inspired by my realizations on this. And the post was basically saying, how do you guarantee success, or how do you amplify success? He said the formula is very simple. The formula is very, very simple. Number one, good character. See, if you're a good person, your opportunities and your options immediately expand, because people want to work with good people, right? They want to work with people who are fair, just, loyal, hardworking, reasonable, because then you can achieve great things with such people. So I said, formula number one, well, part one, good character. So you should have good character. Formula number two, you should do good work. Okay. So the quality of what you deliver should be good quality. You should be proud of what you do, and you should be proud of it because you know it's of a good quality. If I share this with people, I'm not ashamed of it, because I know that what I'm offering is good value. It will make a difference to people's lives. So good character, do good work. And the third formula, and I realized this is where I hadn't always been so strategic. The third part of the equation was to do it in good association, right? Now, I'm sure many of us can relate to this. I'm sure many of you have been in that situation before. You're a good person and you're working hard, but you're doing it around people who don't necessarily appreciate or understand what you're doing, or the value of what you're doing. And that becomes a problem, you see? So it's so incredible. When I studied personality types for the model that I use, the team model, when I studied the natural entrepreneurs, I saw that one of the greatest skills that they had was that they were able to see a situation in which a particular object would immediately be more valuable. Okay, so it's just like you have your mobile phone. Okay, so that mobile phone, if you just walk on the street to a stranger and you try to sell it, they may pay you something if they give you anything for it. If that same mobile phone, if you clean it, you pull a nice attractive mobile phone cover, if you go to a very high-end or exclusive area of your city where things are sold, in a, you know, for a high-end luxury audience, that same phone sold in that store where you have high-end customers, that same phone will immediately be worth much, much more. So I saw that people who were natural entrepreneurs, it wasn't just about doing something. It was about doing it in the right context or in the right association. And I saw that the right association can literally amplify the value of what an individual is actually doing, right? Again, this idea of Sambandha, the idea of having the right focus, the right strategic focus. Everyone has the same amount of time in the day, right? We all have 24 hours in the day. How we focus our time determines whether you're successful or whether you get left behind, right? It's so fundamentally powerful that we can easily overlook it. And you can go through life working really hard, spending all the hours God sends, working really, really hard, and not get so far. I was reflecting on the role I have now. I'll be honest, this is the best job I've had. It just makes all other jobs I've had, it just makes them pale into insignificance. All I do every day is I empower leaders. When I leave my job, I leave with more energy than when I started the job, because I'm buzzing from learning, empowering other leaders, teaching them new things, sharing new research, because it feeds me. Do you see what I'm trying to say? Right? I think it was Steve Jobs, he made a statement about this. When you love what you do, then what you do is no longer a job, right? It's a pleasure. I'm getting paid to do something I enjoy. That's my life. Right? Again, think about this point, strategic focus. The role I was in, the company I was in previously, it was so much effort for very little return because I wasn't playing to my strengths. I wasn't correctly situated to play to my strengths. And if we understand this, this is perhaps one of the reasons why in the modern society, there's huge focus, especially amongst the younger generation, in finding their purpose. Because there's an intuitive understanding that we've got so much to give. Where should I direct my time, my energy, my skills, my insights, my ideas? And if we direct it in the right way, it amplifies. If I direct it in the wrong way, it actually starts to go down. Okay, so I'm going to link this. When I said earlier that we could reduce the number of failed marriages or bad relationships, it's through helping people to understand before they even jump into a relationship. Before you jump in, let's help you to understand who you are so that you can understand the kind of partner that you should look for in order to have a good relationship. Now think about that. Is that the way that most people deal with relationships? Yes or no? Absolutely not. So what happens in this first stage, direction allows you to be conscious. It allows you to set the frame. I was recently with Russell Brand. So he came to one of our centers recently. And it was interesting. I was thinking about him. He's very intellectual in many ways. And he's got this podcast, Under the Skin. And he's having these conversations with people. And you can see he's well situated. He loves what he's doing. It's giving him energy, right? He's having these conversations and he's got a broad audience who are listening in. It's actually engaging and motivating him. So he's doing something that actually brings him up and brings him joy and builds a platform. So in life, if we know what we should be focusing on, everything else becomes 100 times more likely to be successful. So in terms of marriage, I've seen people who often have strong marriages. They're often people who know themselves, know what their values are, and therefore have a clear idea of what kind of person will really complement them. And then when they come across that person, they build a relationship and it tends to be very strong, right? What they've done is that they've paid the price up front. What is that price? It's exactly what we're speaking about here, Sambandha, or the price of strategic thinking. They've done the sacrifice of trying to understand the reality that they're dealing with. Most people don't do that in any area of life. Unfortunately, and it's heartbreaking, I'll be honest with you, it's heartbreaking. Most people, they jump in without thinking. There was a very interesting story. There was a very, very interesting story. I was in Germany. There was a festival in Germany. And to be very honest with you, there was someone in the audience who I knew. And I got the distinct impression, and they were thinking about someone who I knew as well. And they were thinking, how come this person gets so much respect and so much appreciation? Because that person is very managerial. They're very much into execution. And this person gets lots of respect and appreciation, doesn't do any of that. No execution at all, but they get so much respect. And this person was wondering, how, I don't understand. They don't do much work. How come they get so much respect and appreciation? Now the speaker knew what they were thinking. He had, he's had some interaction with them. The speaker then gave a very interesting story in the class, and I'll never forget it. And it's a famous story. It's a famous story about one king. And the king has his advisor, and the advisor gets lots of gold coins in payment. And the other ministers, they're thinking, why? I don't understand. Like, why do you give this much to this advisor, etc., etc.? Oh, you have to leave. Okay, let me just pause there. Do people have to go? I'm just going to pause.
Ami just has to step out for work. But that's
okay, no problem. Thank you, Ami, for being here. Okay, I think, yeah, thank you. Okay, so so the king was paying this advisor many gold coins, and the other ministers are thinking, why is this advisor getting so much money? And they were a bit jealous. And the king understood what was going on, and he said to the ministers, I will show you why this advisor gets paid so much. So the king had been given a gift. Okay, he'd been given the gift of this treasure chest of precious jewels, etc. And the king wanted to know, how much does this treasure chest of jewels, how much does it weigh? Okay, and all the ministers, they couldn't figure out, how do we understand how much it weighs, etc., etc. Because his question was, how many bags of sand, right? What's the equivalent weight of this treasure chest in bags of sand? Like, they had these standard bags of sand at the time, and none of the ministers could work it out. And the king said, okay, you all couldn't work out the answer. Now call the advisor. And he called the advisor and he asked the same question to the advisor. The advisor said, don't worry, my king, I'll find out. I'll let you know how many. And so what the advisor did, he had the treasure chest taken to the bank where the boats are situated. And before anything else, what the advisor told his assistants, he said, measure the sea level. Okay, just measure the sea level before anything. And they measured the sea level, and they said, okay, now put the treasure chest on the boat. They put the treasure chest on the boat. The sea level went up, and he said, okay, mark the new sea level. Okay, so sea level went up because the boat was pressed down by the treasure chest, and they marked it. And then they took the treasure chest off, and he said, okay, now, and he told his servants, now put the sandbags on the boat until the sea level goes back up to the new level. And when it went up to the new level, he said, okay, stop. And then he reported to the king, my dear king, these are how many bags of sand are equivalent to the weight of the treasure chest. And the king turned to his ministers and said, this is why I pay him so many gold coins. So what happens, and the Eastern literatures talk about this, and this was the role of what they call the Brahminical class in the ancient society. What happens is, if you have the correct intellectual insight, you literally can change everything. It's the difference between guiding someone and saying, look, you've got this character, so you should look for a partner who's like this, 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 and this, because that will complement you. It's the difference between giving that person the guidance up front, or, which we see in the modern world, giving no guidance up front, people just going into a relationship with anyone and then asking them to pay you literally thousands of dollars to get marriage counseling because they've been at each other's throats, arguing, bitterly criticizing each other, you know, and they've already done damage now, right? Because once you've said something hurtful to your partner, they remember that. So you've already damaged the relationship. And now that the relationship is damaged, now it's like, okay, we're about to get a divorce, but we thought that before we go for a divorce, we're gonna do one last ditch attempt. Can you help us to stop fighting, etc.? And what they don't talk about, not only is it now later because the scars are already there, but if they've got children, then the children have seen mum and dad arguing, shouting at each other, and that can affect the child, right? That can make the child feel fearful. That can make the child feel threatened. I have a friend, and she's in a relationship, and she told me, she said that when she got into a relationship, she saw that there were certain patterns of her behavior in the relationship, and she started to think, where did they come from? And she said that they came from when she thought that her father was going to leave her mother when she was young. And it created certain types of insecurity, which then played out into her later relationships. So in the Vedic literature, the idea is we don't let the situation become bad in the first place, right? We don't fix it when it's an emergency. We fix it before it becomes an emergency, right? That guidance before the issue has arisen is worth millions of times the same intervention later on when you've already got problems. To use a more modern day example, it's a difference between, let's say, going back 30 years. If 30 years ago, we all decided as a human society, let's be sustainable. Let's use recycled materials. Let's cut our consumption. If we decide that 30 years ago, then you're nowhere near the crisis. But if you wait till things have got really bad, then what you're forced to do is make emergency changes. They are more drastic, and the output or the impact is even less. So this is the idea of this first stage direction. It's the idea of strategic thinking. It's the idea of the 80-20 rule. Where am I getting the most bang for my buck, right? And we're going to get you to do this as an exercise in a moment, because in a moment, actually, I'm going to ask to the host, can I have control so that I can create breakout rooms, please? Can you make me a host? Because I want you to digest this knowledge. This is not about theory. I want you to really take this and you know, practice this and get a feel for this, because it will literally change your life. What we're going to do as an exercise is I'm going to ask you to do a bit of a scan of your life. I'm going to ask you to look at where you're putting your focus, and I'm going to ask you to evaluate, is it in the right areas, okay? And I'm going to ask you to think about this in a few dimensions. I'm going to ask you to think about this in the dimensions of your business, okay? So where's my business focusing, right? Is it the right area? And if it is, great, great. But I'm going to ask you to justify it. If it's the right area, you should be able to explain logically the reason why we put so much time, energy, and resources here is because we know this is going to be good, and this is why we know it. Okay, so write this down. Number one, business. Okay, so number one is business, and part A and part B. Part A is, where are we focused now? Okay, this is all Sambandha. This is all understanding and coming into deep touch with the reality of my situation. So 1A, where are we focused now as a business? Okay, so you think about where does your business spend most of the time? Where are the people being focused, right? Where are the people, your team members, spending their time? Where's your advertising focus? I mean, can you imagine it? There are so many businesses, they've got these products and services, and they're marketing it to completely the wrong audience. I know businesses, they've got high-end products, and they're advertising in these magazines and these websites where their audience will never come. And they've never taken the time to step back and look, hold on, what's going on here? We're spending all this time and energy marketing in this way, but our audience is elsewhere. If we just shifted that focus immediately, we'd be much more successful. So 1A, where is my business focused? 1B, is that focus the right one? If so, why? If not, why not? Okay, so think about that. So where are we focused in our business? Is it correct? If so, why? If it's not correct, why? How do we know it's not correct? What's the proof? So that's one part. Number 2, and this is a focus on me as an individual. Where am I focusing my time and energy in relationships generally? Right, so who am I spending time with? Right, what kind of people, etc., etc. That's 1A. 1B, is it the right focus? If so, why? If not, why not? Okay, and again, our emphasis here, this is all about Sambandha. If you remember nothing else, please, 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 I beg you, if you remember nothing else from this session, this one key point will transform your entire life. It's where you focus your energy that makes all the difference, right? Ricken and I, we have many friends. I mean, one of the people that we know, he started doing a lot on social media and he blew up. If he did the same thing, but in different environments, he wouldn't have got the same success. But he had this ability, but then he had the intelligence to understand, okay, I've got this ability to speak. Where would be the best place for me to demonstrate that ability in such a way that I can have the greatest impact? And that really changed everything for him. So this idea of strategy, focus, understanding the reality, understanding where do I direct my energies, my skills. Some of you, you may be working with people who don't necessarily appreciate what you bring. And if you gave the same skills, the same knowledge, the same insight in a different setting, immediately you'll just fly through. Yeah? Think about this. Some of you, you're in a friendship circle with people. There's 3 types of friends. Some of you, you have a friendship circle where your friends are negative, right? They may be a bit envious or a bit negative. So what's happening is whenever you're sharing your successes, they're draining you. We call them the energy vampires. Another group of friends are neutral. They're not encouraging you, but they're not draining you. So it's just like neutral. It's okay. Third group, when you share your successes, they're happy for you. They want you to succeed. You want them to succeed. There's a very beautiful verse in the Bhagavad Gita. Yaya tamam prapadyante. The idea is that in relationship, there's reciprocation. Right? In the Bhagavad Gita, that statement's being spoken by Krishna, and he's saying that he'll reciprocate. Whatever you do, I'll reciprocate with it. And real relationships are based upon reciprocation, right? Bad relationships are based upon you giving and someone else just taking. And that's a relationship which burns out. So you've got 1A and B, you've got 2A and B. I'm going to put you into breakout rooms and we're going to give you 10 minutes, let's say 9 minutes. And I just want you to share, okay? I just want you to get into deep touch with reality. Because the more you understand the reality of your situation, immediately you'll have more and more insight. Okay, you know what? I've been spending a lot of time with these people and there's not much reciprocation. If I spent the same amount of time with this group, I think we could immediately move forward, right? Who are your energy vampires? And who are the people who do reciprocate? And I'm going to give a little nuance to this, by the way. There are some people they don't reciprocate, but they would if they could. That's different, right? It's just that circumstances don't allow them to, but if they were in a situation that they could reciprocate, they would. So that's not a bad person. I'm talking about people who are selfish, to be very honest, right? Who can help. You're helping them and they could help, but they just want to take, right? Again, Pareto principle, right? What happens to a person who spends all their time with people who are negative and who just drain you? And what happens if you change? It's not more work. Think about it. It's not more work. It's the same effort, but with people who would appreciate it and who would reciprocate. Just imagine how much more you could do. Okay, so we're going to put you into breakout rooms. I'm going to create some random breakouts. You'll be in random pairs. I just want you to get that practice, just the sheer practice of deep dive. What's the truth? What's the reality of my situation? What is my sambandha? Okay, any questions before I start the breakout rooms for 8 minutes? Okay, so you should see the invite coming through in a moment, and then we'll bring you back after 8 minutes, and then we'll hear from you, and we'll open up the questions and answers. Okay. Cool. Okay, I can see Paul's back. I can see Palak has returned as well. Fantastic.
I clicked the wrong button. I was in the middle of speaking and just.
Oh, my apologies. We gave over 8 minutes.
It's all good.
That's my little disclaimer, but yes.
How was the discussion?
Really good, really good. These questions we could have spent much more time with them.
Yes, and we will. I just want to emphasize that. So first of all, thank you for doing this. I was telling Rick, and I'm going to be very transparent with you. In the past, and I'm reorienting this over time, slowly over time. In the past, when I would give classes or seminars or courses, because I'm just so broadly interested, I'll talk about many different models and ideas and so on. Although we have shared a lot of different things, I've tried to tie everything back to the same principle in this class, with all the examples and illustrations, because in the Vedic tradition, there's a very detailed understanding of psychology. And the idea is that if through illustrations, examples, anecdotes, stories, etc., if you can bring everything back to 1 or 2 key points, it leaves a deep impression in people's minds. And by that deep impression, there's a greater likelihood that people will transform. That means that they will do something differently. And I'm very excited and interested always in transformation, right? So I've deliberately tried to take that approach in this area. So before I go on, what's the one key point I've been trying to really talk about throughout this particular session? If you could say it in 1 sentence or 1 word, what's the key emphasis? Exactly. Focus, right? It's where you put your strategic focus, where you choose to play, right? With your time, energy, resources, relationships. This, ladies and gentlemen, this makes all the difference. It makes all the difference. I have a mission. I'll be very honest with you. Not only with the whole thing I said about marriages, but also in terms of young people being able to be more successful. I was telling a few friends of mine that team model that we use. If young people understood themselves before they went to university, they really understood their nature, right? You're a natural business-minded person. So these are courses which you're going to love studying, right? It's not that you're going to struggle and you're going to have to just get through it so you can get a job. No, because you've got this kind of tendency, this natural gift. If you study any of these 20 topics, which are business related, you won't even think that you're studying. You'll feel like you'll feel like every time you come to class, it's just like, wow, it's just such a great experience. And because it's something that you have a natural interest in, you're much more likely to get a top grade. Because you have a top grade from a good university, you're gonna have companies headhunting you. It's not you're looking for a job, the job is looking for you. Again, just think about the power of that. Some of you have children. Think about the power of that. Again, the same principle, direction. It all begins with the focus. The correct strategic focus can change our lives. It can change our lives, ladies and gentlemen. So that said, I'm going to pause for a moment and ask any reflections on what you did, any questions, any comments before we close. Any thoughts? Dunia?
Yes. Thank you, Rudy. Thank you. Yes, thank you so much, Ed, for sharing. I can see how passionate again you are, and it's very interesting, as you mentioned at the end, about how you shared that knowledge with us, and that maybe before you used to share many things at the same time, but now you go so granular on one topic. And I'm sharing this with you because right now I'm actually finalizing a training on becoming a trainer, becoming that kind of, how do you deliver trainings, workshop, and so on. And so I could, as I'm listening to you, I can see a bit of the structure that I'm learning. So how you ask us questions to integrate, and then you share, then you put us into groups to really integrate what we've been going through. So thank you so much for the value, and I would say yes, it's really always regaining clarity on where you focus, and step back to reevaluate, and simply to share in between on maybe some of you already do it, and what I do on Friday really helped me as well to review the week past and then to prepare the next week. So like this, I'm more clear on where I'm heading. And the last thing I wanted to share, because we were talking about Steve Jobs, another quote, and we have many Steve Jobs fans here, is about, I don't know if you heard about this principle of the dots, and you go from the ending dot and you walk backward to where you are. So where is your objective? Okay, where you want to go, and so you look at where you want to go, and then you step backwards to find the steps you should do right now, and where you should put your energy and focus. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that. And I'll just add one thing to that, and then we want to come to Dunya. So yeah, it's absolutely critical to really, there's two sides to it. It's what we say yes to is important, but also equally, if not more important, is what you say no to, right? In order to move forward in a certain area, you have to create the space for it. So you have to say yes to the right things. And we must also respectfully, and in a nice way, say no to things which are not going to take us in a healthy direction, right? This is really, really important. And you can think of your business as like a person. When a person has healthy self-esteem, they're able to say yes to the right things. They're able to also have healthy boundaries and say, you know what? Thank you, but that's not quite for me. Yeah, Dunya.
Yeah, first of all, I want to say thank you so much, and I appreciate everything you brought together. And funny enough, the day before yesterday, I was meditating and I was asking for clarity. So my intention was to receive clarity, and I didn't read what we are going to do today, but regarding to the focus, I just rescheduled my thoughts, and thank you for that exercise. And for me, there's one thing very clear. I am shifting now from preparing and from preparation into showtime. Wonderful. Yeah? And I want to say thank you so much for that. I was working a lot, preparing and testing and beta version here and there and preparing everything. But now it's showtime, and I really love that you were like the tipping point today, and you just shift that whole boat for me. Thank you so much. And for everyone who was here today.
Thank you so much. I mean, on that point, I'll just share with you something which I thought was very useful. And you'll see this, I touched upon this in the previous talk. This was from Beware the Busy Manager. So in the study, they found that most managers are not successful because they are in the wrong spaces. The place to be is here. So high energy and high focus is exactly what we were speaking about. So they're purposeful. They use their time and energy in very clear, wise, intentional ways. The other 90%, look at that. The other 90% are everywhere else, disengaged. So they may be highly focused, but their energy is low. So they focus, but they just don't have the energy to push through. Low energy, low focus, so they're procrastinating. Start, stop, start, stop. So focus on one thing, try and do a bit, and then forget about it. Focus on something else, try and do a little bit, and then forget about it. Scattered. And then you have distracted. Low focus, high energy. So they're running around, but they're not getting very far. So we want to be in this space. High focus, high energy as well. The more that someone is in that space, the more successful they'll be, because you have your correct use of your resources in the areas that will make the real and lasting difference. Thank you for that. Any other last comments before? I know we may need to end. Ricken, is it time to close, or do you have more time for questions?
We're okay if people want to ask or share.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Oh, Avantika. Avantika, please.
Please, Avantika.
Hey, thank you so much, Edith. I thought it was a wonderful discussion. And I had a few reflections. One of them, of course, was around, you know, as you were speaking, and I totally get it. And it's, you know, it's very interesting to see how the result of selective focus plays out in outcomes. And I personally have benefited a lot from that. But there have been, you know, so, and it's very interesting, you used earlier the word, and because my ears are tuned to that, you used the word Leela.
Yeah.
The game of life, you know, when there's divine play, and you just take it as a game. And over there also, so and the reason I bring that up is actually one of the programs I offer is called Leela. And I feel that there's so much more. I know that there's a lot of, ever since this book Secret came out and the movie came out, there's a lot of you know, fascination with manifestation and law of attraction and everything. But I feel the greater guiding principles as I learned them and as I observed them and as I saw the benefit of them in my own life and many other people's lives who've achieved a lot, is these two things. One is that almost everything else disappears. It's like the focus, it's like Arjun and the fish that he's shooting at. That is the only thing that he sees. So one of the things that I've seen is that if there is at any time on my plate more than one or two really important things that I'm really chasing after, that means I'm not focusing. I'm on the wrong track. And the second thing that I've just discovered is that if I'm working for more than 4 hours a day, which is too much actually for me, because it's really when I'm not working that the work is being done. It's the more time I'm leaving to play that game of Leela is when the work is actually being done. So Khalil Gibran, who wrote his beautiful magnum opus in the time that everyone thought, what is he doing? He's not doing anything. So that's the takeaway I'm going to take from this beautiful, beautiful discussion. I had a last question. Sambandh, you know, the way I understand Sanskrit means connection, relationship.
Yes.
And I love the fact that you've said is direction. So is it because the focus is our connection with the direction in which we're headed?
Avantika, thank you so much for sharing that. And that's absolutely right. So Sambandh can have different meanings in different contexts. Sometimes it's the full phrase is Sambandha Gyan. Part of strategy, when strategy is done well in the Vedic understanding, you do it until you have a connection to it. In other words, it's not just a question of writing something down. It has to fire, it has to set your heart on fire. Then you really have a focus. It's not like, oh, I know I should do, you know, people have a wish list. That's not Sambandh, right? It's just like, that's a wish list. But when it's something that you're invested in, I know why I'm doing it. I know what I'm going to focus on. I know what I'm just going to stop focusing on. I know why I'm going to do it. When I have a full sense of the importance of it. In other words, when it leads to conviction, when my strategy and my focus become a conviction, then I've properly achieved strong Sambandha. Yeah, that's how you know that you're there. So thank you very much. And it's so interesting. I was going to tell that story. It's so amazing. There's something going on here. There's something, we're connected. So I was going to tell the story. Well,
beautiful.
I was going to tell a similar story, actually, not that, but similar story, because I was going to talk about Arjuna to give the example, and I loved your example, so thank you for that. There's a story of the Pandavas. Dronacharya wanted to test them. He's their teacher. So what he does is he calls them up one by one. These are 5 brothers. They're all warriors, fighters. He calls one of them up, and he's put a model of a bird in the tree, and they're going to be asked to shoot the eye of the bird. Okay, the first brother who comes up he says to him, what can you see? Can you see the tree? They say, yes. He says, all right, don't shoot, sit down. The next one, can you see the tree? I can't see the tree. Can you see the branch? I can see the branch, sit down. You know, the next one, can you see the tree? No. Can you see the branch? No. What can you see? I can see the bird's body, sit down. So as they each come up and he asks them, what can you see? Whenever they give an answer showing that they can see so many things, he says, don't shoot, sit down. The last person to come up is Arjuna, who's one of the greatest warriors in that group, the Pandavas. And Arjuna is very, very highly trained as a warrior. So Dronacharya says to Arjuna, Arjuna, can you see the tree? Arjuna says, I can't see the tree. He says, can you see the branches of the tree? I can't see the branches of the tree, Arjuna says. He says, can you see the body of the bird? Arjuna says, no, I can't see the body of the bird. So Dronacharya says to him, Arjuna, what can you see? Arjuna says, all that I can see is the eye of the bird. And Dronacharya at that point says, therefore you are qualified to shoot. And that's what we want. I know, and I've made this mistake in my life. I've seen times in my life where, I mean, we've worked so strongly, but it wasn't strategic. It wasn't as strategic as it could have been. So tremendous effort, but not necessarily the same outcomes that we could otherwise have achieved, you know? And I see many of us can be in that space. So there's many people, good-hearted, sincere, hardworking. We're going to come to the hard work piece in the next program, in the next part of this 3-part series. But this is all about strategy. Where can I focus the skills, time, and energy that I have for the best outcomes? Thank you, Avantika. Any other questions or comments? Thank you. Okay, so, if there's no other questions, then maybe we will end the session here.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ed, for sharing everything that you did. I mean, it's relevant to all of us in so many ways because we're all executing, we're all trying to plan, and we're all trying, we all have destinations to get to. So in so many different ways, this is very applicable, and the stories and the analogies all really help the examples to come to life. And I think what you've done for me is you've just created a greater sense of urgency to bring more strategizing and planning into our life, and to create that urgency, I think, is such a powerful vehicle to move forward. So thank you so much. And I know everyone else probably hopefully feels the same way.
Thank you. And I just want to end because I'm so enthusiastic about transformation. Please take the principle and think about, you can apply it in any area of life. Whether it's your personal relationships, your friendships, it may even be that you have a health regime, right? And you're doing all these things for your health, and you start to notice, I'm spending hours doing this, and it's not moving the needle. And then this other thing I'm doing is making my health much better. So why don't I spend more time on this health regime, which really drives my health up, rather than working so hard in this other health activity, which isn't doing so much for me, So again, it's a universal blueprint. This is a universal model, strategic thinking. Where should my focus be? Whether it's health, friendships, career. If you're working as part of a big company, there's some people in the company, if you get in front of them, it can immediately give you new opportunities. Whereas other people in the company, you do the same work for them, no one knows about it, so you don't move forward. So this is the same principle. So you can apply this across the board, and every time it will make a big difference. Thank you.
Any other closing?
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
No, thank you, Ida. Please finish off.
Oh, I was just going to say, Ed, it's always an absolute pleasure. I've taken pages and pages of notes, and, Ricken kind of nailed it on the head when you said, you can take this and apply it to all areas of your life, all areas of your life. So, thank you. We love you. Come back again.
We love you. We're looking forward. Part 2 will build on part 1, and we're going to talk about the next stage, right? So direction is today. Next session that we do with you will be drive. It will be all about the effort, the endeavor, the execution.
And that session will be in 2 weeks' time on November 5th for all that have joined, and we'll continue to remind people about that.
Okay. And thank you for being such a gracious audience and for sharing and discussing. It's always a pleasure. I look forward to seeing you soon. Take care.
Yes, thank
Thanks,
you.
Titans. Have a great weekend. See you on the
Take
group.
care.
Thank
Thank you so
you,
much.
Balitis,
Have a great
Avantika,
weekend, everyone. Bye,
Paul.
Avantika.
Thank you, Christina.
Bye,
Good to
Paul,
see you.
Christina.
Dunya, Navneeta. It's great to see everybody.
Paul.
Thank you. Thank you.